132 in Bush. I've got him at gunpoint.
Okay, gunpoint 132 in Bush. Covers code 3.
Welcome to Roll Call with the Richmond, Indiana Police Department. I'm Detective Pat Tudor, and today's our first episode of Roll Call with Richmond PD. Today's podcast, we're going to introduce the Chief of Police, the Assistant Chief of Police. We're going to talk a little bit about the podcast, what the purpose is, and go through kind of the overview of our agency. So first, I'll have our guests introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Kyle Weatherly. I'm the Chief of Police for the Richmond Police Department.
Adam Blanton, Assistant Chief.
Well, I guess welcome. I know that this is actually take 2 of our podcast. We had some things we did last time we wanted to make some improvements on, so hopefully this will not require a third. I do appreciate you guys being here, so I guess let's just jump right into it. Where did this vision, I guess first and foremost, for the podcast come from? And I guess even how did we come up with the name Roll Call, and what's the significance of that name?
Yeah, I think for us it was the opportunity to be more transparent, to be more involved in our community. I think as law enforcement officers, one of the things that we probably don't do really well is tell people what we're doing, why we're doing it, give them that context. So we tried a couple of different ways to do it. There's red tape in government for a reason. So we've kind of learned around that, and this year gives us a more conversational way to just kind of let people know what their government looks like, what their government's doing. Roll Call for us, I think, was an easy name to stick with, just because for us, every one of our patrol shifts, they have something called Roll Call. And what they do is that they come into the department prior to the start of their shift, and their supervisor, whoever it is, kind of leads them through some training, talks about kind of what the shift before is seen, what the shift's going to look like, things to be on the lookout for, and it really just kind of keeps them up to date in the day-to-day. So for us, we figured what better way to make a little play on words than to give Richmond their very own roll call.
And I mean, you and I know with the community engagement aspect of things, we're out talking with people constantly. So this is just another way, those people that don't always get a chance just to sit and have a conversation with us or talk with us or interact with us, this is another way of us giving them that opportunity. So it's more just so conversations with the community to let them get to know the police department just a little bit better. So this is their police department. We want them to know every aspect of it.
Well, and I think, we've discussed this even prior to, actually making the commitment that we were going to have a podcast. It's like, I've been on 28 years actually this month, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. But, there's definitely been changes within the community, within the agency, with personnel, with leadership and those things. And when those things change, I think it's always important that the community, we stay connected to and with them. Right now, we're roughly a 76-person department, give or take. And about a third of our department, wouldn't you agree, has less than 2 years on. So
Absolutely.
we're pretty young as an agency right now. We're losing a lot of great officers just due to retirement. We've had some recent retirements. I think maybe 4 or 5 guys have retired in the last 6 months, and I know we've got some pending retirements coming up, and so for the community to see that and to know that, and I think even equally as important for us to give a little bit of honor back to those guys who have been serving with the agency for 20 or 30, or I think just the other day I think I heard that both Officer Aaron Stevens and Detective Tom Laguerre, where like their anniversaries were 40 and 41 years on the agency.
Yeah.
And both of those guys still, they work hard.
Absolutely.
For their community. So, I think it's good that we have the opportunity to let our community know that. I think there's great value, and as we have each one of our episodes to be able to bring in our agency right in here and to sit down with our leadership, to sit down with our officers, and let them meet the community, and I think is important.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think one thing for me that really resonates with this is one. I mean, community policing is the heart. It's something that's been near and dear to me. It's something that I've really been a thorn in his side, and to say that, to also say that as an administrator, as a chief of police, to have a chief who has allowed us to do these sort of things without restrictions. There's people who will watch all over from different police departments and different parts of the country who can sit there and say, hey, we've got admin who won't let us do this, we won't let us try this idea, we won't do this. So to have a guy like him who is really open to allowing us to do our job, to find different ways to connect, is important, because at the end of the day, as much as I hate to say it, people are going to fill the gap in silence. And when law enforcement doesn't come out and talk, when law enforcement doesn't come out and say, hey, here's what's going on in the community, here's what we're seeing, here's what we're doing, people fill that gap. And a lot of times the gap that they fill it with isn't always the truth. Or it's a perceptual issue that they think, hey, this is this. No one said anything, so this has got to be the case. And it just couldn't be further from the truth. So this is an opportunity for, I guess, you to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. And
Well,
I think that's kind of important.
I'm kind of smiling because we had a recent incident where our SWAT team had to be utilized, and we helped out a couple adjacent counties. That, the investigation led across some borders, so it was very multi-jurisdictional, and I think there was a video that had been posted from that. And,
There was.
And I didn't actually watch the video, but I know from talking to some officers, I mean, there was so much confusion because it said Richmond PD, but is that Richmond, Virginia, Kentucky? And people are like, there's no snow down here.
That's
and
right.
Where's this at? And,
There's a Richmond everywhere you go.
Yeah.
But our Richmond is special. So.
But again, it's like, that's that filling in the gap. It's the
is.
perception thing.
But, and I think to kind of comment on that just for a second is that, it had close to 2 million views. What that tells you is that your community is craving that. They want to be engaged. They want to see the things. They're interested. They're fascinated in it. So, you don't just get 2 million people who happen to click on a 12-second video out of happenstance. I mean, it's somebody who wants to see it. They're interested in it. So, for us, that tells us, especially in an administration or an administrative role, man, the people want to be involved. They want to see what's going on. And whether that's to critique it or to, celebrate it, it doesn't really make a difference. That's transparency in government, right? That's allowing them to see what they're doing. What we do. We represent the people. It's not an us them thing. And I think that's a really important thing to kind of break down, a barrier to break down.
Yeah, and you're going to have it both ways, no matter what way you go with it. On that specific video clip, that 12-second video, you're going to have people who are going to be against it.
The critics.
You're going to have people that are going to be very supportive of it. I mean, you got it both ways, and we have to be open-minded enough to understand that people are not going to see everything the same. That's the beauty of our country. We have the opportunities to have different opinions.
Yeah.
So it's just our responsibility to make sure that we are putting the information out there. It's up to the person to take it in however they see fit.
Yeah, and I also think that, if we don't tell our story, or paint our narrative or explain sometimes the reasons that we do things. Like if you're not in this profession, it's easy from a certain perspective, depending on whatever the climate may be in the country, to step back and say, oh, this is what's going on. And we saw that with some of the posts, and some of them were not even close to being accurate.
You fill the gaps,
But
right?
yeah. So it's, and that's where I feel like there's a lot of value in being able to, tell the community, the community that we serve, that we love, that, hey, this is why we do what we do, and let them hold us accountable for the job that we have, taken an oath to do,
Absolutely.
and have them hold us accountable to saying, hey, are you guys doing this the best way possible? So,
Absolutely.
yeah, and I know that that's important for us. As an agency, for you guys administrators. I know going back to the community engagement thing, I mean, I really felt a few years ago that, I was going to look for other opportunities, potentially retire. I had 26 years on the time at that time, and was given an opportunity to really focus strictly on community engagement. I think the first year we did 180 some plus community related events.
Yep.
Last year we were closer to 250. This year we're, and it's not, just one person, right? It's the agency. It's building that culture within the agency to where our officers are engaging in these events that build those relationships. We've got the Polar Plunge that's coming up. I've had several officers. They're like, man, I don't know about getting in no freezing water, but it's
This
for a
guy
great
definitely is not. So
Yeah, I assure you I am not.
polar bear here.
Yeah.
You
I'll do it.
yeah. Well, and again, we've got some guys, and I was teasing one of our officers, Jesse Tyree, that does like a cold bath almost
Yes.
daily.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, for a guy like him, he's probably going to walk right in, sit down, and then there'll be some of us that, jump
Yeah.
right in and jump right back out. But
Absolutely.
again, that's kind of that vulnerability sometimes that the community doesn't see about us. I mean, I think a lot of law enforcement, we get kind of dehumanized because of the jobs we have to do. But I mean, from everything that we've done in our communities, coaching, I know that you've got 2 daughters that you're heavily involved in their athletics and that kind of stuff. And
yeah.
me for years doing the same thing. It's like, it gives us a chance to be somebody outside the profession sometimes. So, I appreciate the opportunity to have the chance to do this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's just talk a little bit maybe, now that we kind of laid the foundation for kind of the purpose of the podcast, but maybe go into a little bit about the agency itself. I mentioned somewhere around 76 officers, and I think by contract through the city, that's the number of officers that we've been designated to have. But I know those numbers can fluctuate, right? And
Yeah, so with the FOP and the city, those numbers are negotiated between the two. And that number landed on 76. So obviously with that, we have the heart and soul of the agency and patrol, the patrol division, which is led by Lieutenant Austin Lips, doing a phenomenal job. He oversees the patrol division, which also includes the Richmond Community School resource officers. We were able to secure a partnership with RCS to take over the safety and security of the schools, because those are the kids of our community. So our extension of our patrol division is into the schools, because that is important.
and how many officers do we have currently in the schools?
4.
4.
Yeah, and then you have the follow-up investigators and the major crimes investigators in the investigations division led by Andy Jury. So Andy is doing a great job in there with growing that division and keeping that team together. They are not just clearing cases. I've always hated that phrase, clearing cases. It's not just that, it's getting convictions. That's what's important. We are a voice for the victims within our community.
Well, and I know we talked about retirements, and we'll give a shout out to I guess, former maybe Detective Gerard Longnecker, because I know that he's kind of officially, unofficially, I know he still has some days scheduled, but he's actually, I think he made his last final walk out of the building, last week. So, he's retiring. I know that we've got Detective Mark Sutton that's going to retire, here very soon. And those are big shoes to fill.
100%.
You've got two detectives that had a lot of time in patrol, learning all that street level stuff, and then both been in detectives for 15 years or more. So again, those are two big set of shoes that we have to fill back in that division. And I know as we navigate through our podcast, our next podcast is actually going to be with Lieutenant Lips, who oversees the patrol division.
Yep.
And I know our goal for that is to have him come in and maybe bring some of his level of supervision, some of his officers, and just talk about what their daily operations look like. Also doing the same thing with Captain Jury, and then just kind of going through the other divisions within our agency. Just maybe talk a little bit about what those other divisions are.
Yeah, so we also have the SAFE unit, which is the Strategic and Focused Enforcement. And those guys are really what we consider proactive patrol. So those are the guys who, and gals who work with that group, that if there is, something going on in our city, maybe it's a theft ring, maybe it's a series of narcotics, cells or usage or something to that effect, they're really what our hard group of, hey, we're going to go out and find this and we're going to mitigate this in our community. And they've been unbelievably successful. Unbelievably. That group's led by Sergeant Tyler Hobbs. He also oversees our SWAT team, which is an incredible thing. And, I think one thing, like I said, I always try to remember, if we're going off the name roll call, kind of having some of that dialogue for the community to, understand. We are incredibly fortunate here in the Richmond Police Department to have a dedicated SWAT team.
Oh, yeah.
Now, again, being a department where, we have 76 officers, at any given time, guys are going to wear multiple hats, and they're going to do a lot of things. So, to have we have 16 officers on our SWAT team, highly trained, highly professionalized, that anywhere in the state of Indiana that someone says, hey, we need some help, the Richmond Police Department, the officers of this community, that the community has given us the ability to do, will go out and do it. And again, just to kind of hit on what you talked about, we just assisted the Connersville Police Department. We just assisted the Rushville Police Department with our team. And that's an incredible asset for a community to have, because there are many communities around here that don't have a SWAT team, and if they do, it's more of an ad hoc team. It's a bunch of individuals who are operating for a collective same good. But to be able to dedicate the time that we have to training, to equipment, to doing the things that they do, I just want the people of Richmond to understand that we truly are unique and truly are blessed to have what we have. And especially to have a group that will travel and be requested, around the region to come in and take care of very volatile situations. That says an awful lot about your police department. That says an awful lot about the community, and the police officers that the community allows us to have. So I think that's incredibly important. Again, part of patrol, we have K9. So we have Officer Uphouse, who oversees that program with his partner K9 Ski. Again, these are always the furry fun guys. Those are the ones I wish we'll have to have them here. Our ratings would probably go up that day. But we also have Officer Nordman and K9 Boss, who's definitely a good boy. Boss, that is.
Well, and Officer Norman and his dog Boss, if you guys got to watch our Grinch video.
Yes, he was a star. Yes, he was.
We're talking about the dog, right?
Yes, yeah.
Sorry, Dane.
Officer Nordman will.
The Grinch was not maybe the Grinch could have been the star, but definitely the dog.
That's right. And then we also have Officer Jacob Wolfel, who has his partner Ken.
Before we go on, I do have to say though that I had a conversation with the Grinch and about him coming into the police department. And he was very nervous, right? Because he was a little bit unsure of how Boss was going to react to him.
Yes.
Didn't know if he liked the color green
or
the fur. But
yes.
I know that the Grinch was very nervous. But then once he found out how well trained
and
how well...
And, I think that's another thing to kind of talk about. Again, rounding our group out with, Officer Wolfel, Jake Wolfel, who has Canine Bane, and then Officer Crofta, who has Zane. Bane and Zane, I don't know how we get these names all intertwined.
So
but
Zane, Bane, Boss, and Ski.
you got it.
There we
But
go.
I'll tell you, the one thing about that, and you kind of talk about that video, another thing for the community to understand is that, these are social dogs. These are tools. These are tools that we use to go out in the community. I get it. I'm not necessarily aesthetically pleasing to the eyes, so I'm not somebody you maybe necessarily want to come up and talk to, but, as a canine officer carrying that dog, everybody wants to come talk to you. The kids want to come talk to you. Everybody wants to give face smushes. So, to have these dogs who not only, are able to detect narcotics, but also are able to do, apprehensions, keep our officers safe and do those sort of things, keep our community safe, but then can walk through a school or a festival and, sit and be pet. That's an amazing thing. And that goes a lot to the canine program that we have here, the dogs that we have here, and what we've invested. And, another thing for us to be proud of for the community is that, our canine unit isn't funded. City council doesn't give us a budget and says, here's the budget for the canines. These dogs are self-funded by the community. Whether it be the VFW, who's been an amazing sponsor, Hill's Pet Food. We've had so many different amazing sponsors, some of our local banks, Three Rivers. I mean, these are community's dogs. I mean, it's a fantastic thing to see. So, again, to have as many specialized divisions as we do here at the Richmond Police Department, and not just to have them in number, right? Like quantity is one thing, but quality is another. These guys and gals are the best. And I always make a joke, and I always, kind of have it and say, hey, we're the best in the Midwest. But I mean it. I mean, these are top-notch, guys and gals. Top-notch.
Well, and there's a certain level of commitment that has to come from the agency and from the officers to get those levels that we see. And I can't, agree more to know that, our SWAT operators, our team, our equipment, the canine program, and, and I'll get into more specific details when we can get, Officer Uphouse and his guys and, get Sergeant Hobbs to come in and talk about SWAT, bring in the gear and the equipment. And those are all things like, from an outsider looking in, it's like, I want to know those things. But even from an insider, it's like, oh, wow, I'll see the guys, training for SWAT, and, it draws and piques my interest.
Yeah.
We're going down to the range today to practice these drills or whatever. So, yeah, it's good to know that that we've got an agency and officers that are highly committed to exceeding those standards that are set here and really kind of across the board.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
And I want to add to just a couple things as far as the divisions. Let's not forget Quentin Schuler in charge of our training program. Quentin, from 2024 to 2025, our training hours went up tremendously.
And 25 into 26.
Yeah,
It's continued to build.
Yeah, and that just goes to show the dedication of the officers and their willingness and their desire to just improve themselves in the service that they provide to the community.
Well, and then I think when you talk about those training hours, maybe to get a little bit more focused on that, it's like where do we see and how are we increasing those numbers, right? What does that actually look like that we're doing?
Yeah, and I think that's an incredibly important distinction to make. And, one of the things that we talked about, like you talked about, Officer Aaron Stevens, who was the face of cuffs. So this is not necessarily super new for RPD. You will see Mr. Stevens again. 40 years, Tom Laguerre, 41 years, Detective Longnecker, Detective Sutton, these are individuals who spent literally almost 3 decades here. So training becomes of paramount importance because, again, you said it best when you talked about it earlier, like we're not filling those shoes. Time is the best, experience is the best teacher. It's bar none, it's undefeated, that kind of wisdom. So, how do we play catch up? Well, it's in training, right? It's in, getting individuals ready to be the next person up. Constantly, leading leaders, constantly making the next person ready to fill those shoes. We all know that there's a timeline, right? We all know that there's a shelf life for each and every one of us. But under Chief Weatherly, I think one of the things we've really worked hard on is, having that next person up mentality. That succession plan, that continuity plan. But again, also, we're getting younger and younger officers. You talked about it earlier, less than 2 years. I mean, Kyle, you guys have been around for a while. Sorry, I don't mean to say that in a bad way. Don't get mad at me. But
No disregard.
Yeah.
but I mean, but you have, and I hate to say it, but looking at the community, and we want to talk about this, there's less and less of you. There's so that old adage of the role model or being able to kind of work your way into these positions, it's not there. When you look at our department and 70% of it has less than 10 years on, well, there's not a whole lot of 3-decade senior guys and gals that we can just sit and say, well, we're just gonna follow them around, and when the time comes, we'll be ready. We're having to rapidly accelerate that process to get the quality that we want. So training is absolutely imperative. I think we talk about it all the time. And again, I'm a training guy at heart, always have been. Looking at it and saying, how do we get these officers ready to go when we can't give them the on the job training from some senior person, somebody who's been there, done it, walked the walk. How do we do that? And training's the answer. So that becomes integral. Another part of that training, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but that you kind of spoke about was, again, this is a rapidly evolving community. I mean, what a couple of years ago, I mean, doing cell phones and doing different things like that. I mean, it wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, both of you guys came up probably when, you were lucky to play Snake on a Nokia. So, these people nowadays, they have, the viewers will appreciate that.
Let's talk about the patrol cars we used to have.
Yeah, or the fact that you had to go to a payphone and call somebody in. But,
Not that far back.
But that's, Tom and Austin, or Tom and Aaron definitely did.
Yeah, but I do remember, in the patrol car, my first few years, you kept a little notepad, kind of affixed up on the dash, and dispatch would give you the information, and you're trying to drive it, pull over, write everything down, and now it auto-populates on a computer.
Well, and
it'll even give you directions on how to get there.
Technology. I mean, you can pull your phone up on ChatGPT and be anybody that you want to be. You can do the deep fakes and things like that. So, society's rapidly evolving. Technology is rapidly evolving. We're proverbially behind the 8 ball on that, on everything we do. So training is of the utmost importance. It's a position that, is very important, and Officer Sergeant Schuler does a phenomenal job.
Yeah, and I will say he wears a lot of hats.
He does.
We've had that conversation recently, just with, he not only oversees the training, but, you've got fleet management, you've got, requirements of our training records that have to be sent to the state. And, within the training, we've got different divisions. You've got your firearms, you've got your defensive tactics or physical tactics. You've got your EVOC, which is
and those are mandated training hours that we have to have a license, or you can't even be a police officer. So it's very important.
Yeah.
And a couple more divisions. I know we've gone on and on about a lot of our divisions, which we can do all day long. We could talk about it, but we've got the drone program. We've got officers dedicated to run those drones who work hand in hand with our SWAT team. And another division, which is crash investigations. We've got a few certified officers for crash reconstructions. So, in another very, very key element of the police department is our administrative assistants. They are very, very important with our day-to-day operations. We can never overlook them.
There can't be us without them.
Yeah.
I just can't.
And the last one I want to hit on is the P.A.C.T division. Detective Pat Tudor.
Well, I wasn't even thinking about it.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm not going to forget about that, because you and I had that conversation in 2024 after it was all said and done. You asked us. You sat down in the office. You asked us, what do you want to see going forward? And my answer to you, I don't know if you remember this. I said, you built the foundation. Figure out what direction you want to take the house, and you've done an amazing job with the cadets, Citizens Academy, and the community engagement. You've put yourself out there,
which is not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, it is not.
Well, and it's
not
been
an easy thing to do.
And the thing for me, just because I am so passionate about it, is, I know that the number of hours that I kind of invest, are never maybe necessarily always reflected, but. I feel like I always try to do it for those right reasons.
Yeah.
We've got the Night to Shine Friday night that I'm looking forward to going. My wife and I will get to dress up. I know, there's a couple other chiefs going. The Assistant Chief Dahl's going.
Sergeant Ware's always there.
Yep. So, those are things that, when you're passionate about it and you're invested in it, it's like, it's just so easy. And that's where I feel like, for the last couple years, I've had a great career, but this has kind of been kind of some of the funnest and probably the most rewarding, in my career, to be able to go in and to run our cadet program, which is, just to kind of briefly talk about what that is. It's a program that is really geared at reaching out to the next generation, potentially of officers. So anyone that's 16 to 20 years old, that's either in high school or in college, that's wanting to explore what law enforcement looks like. We've got that program, and we've done great with it. We can go back to years ago when we first started it. We actually have several, who were cadets, who are now employed in law enforcement. We've got 3 or 4 within our agency. I know there's one up in Kokomo. We've got some that work for the jail. And I've actually, right now we've got roughly 16 cadets. And it kind of, the number fluctuates depending on, during certain sport seasons, maybe they can't make it to some of the meetings because of, they've got other commitments. But I've got, roughly 12 to so committed cadets that I know are going to be our next generation of law enforcement here in Wayne County. And those are our local kids.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got Northeastern and Hagerstown and Centerville and Richmond and Lincoln. I mean, those are the kids that, we really want to grab and keep in our community, have families here, stay committed here.
Interest, right?
Yeah. So, I like I said, going back to it, I love it, from the Citizens Academy, being able to, show the community firsthand what we do, and bringing in all the different divisions. It's been very fun and very rewarding.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and you've done a great job with it, and I've enjoyed it too. Getting out in the community and making and new friends, great partners. Adam talked about the VFW. They've been tremendous with us, and so many others have too.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
I mean, our community continually steps up, and I think that's one of the things that upsets me the most is, I just constantly see this, I don't know, this just disdain for our community, or talking down to it in a disparaging way, or oh, that's Richmond, it's this. It's so easy to focus on the negatives, but everywhere has them. I mean, I want to focus on the positives, and I feel like, I hate to say it, but part of my job is to be a cheerleader for the city of Richmond and this community, and the greater Wayne community, or Wayne County community in whole. But
But I mean, I think
it's
that's
unbelievable.
But I think that's what good and great leaders do.
Yeah.
You're going to focus on how to build those things. You know what I'm saying? And the positivities.
Absolutely.
I mean, every community we know is going to have its issues, its constraints on certain things. Whether it's budget and finances or things that occur, and it's like, we get out of this community what we put into it.
Absolutely.
Is kind of what I feel,
Absolutely.
and the community engagement thing has been such a, it's so pretty broad, from being into the schools to just our national night out to our Halloween events to our Christmas stuff to just the day-to-day operations that we do. And, and there's, the opportunities that I've been giving, like last Christmas, we got to go out and do a Grinch project where the Grinch went out and, he hand delivered some presents to some kids in the schools. And, and again, we had a community partner, DB Plumbing, Dale Brooks, great
absolutely,
dude.
yeah.
I called Dale and I said, hey, we've got this initiative we're wanting to do. Is this something that you would be interested in doing? And I think before I could even throw out a dollar amount or whatever, he goes, yeah, what do you need? We'd love to help. So, again, and it's building those relationships, again, talking about the K-9 program and the fun, the financing for that.
I think, we don't have intermissions or pause for station identifications, but, I think, look where we're at.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for Scott Owens and DS1 Live Production, we wouldn't even be having this conversation today. So, I just, and again, this is a community thing. This isn't, taxpayer dollars at work. This is a community member who has what I consider a pretty amazing location and studio and equipment, who says, hey, have cameras will work. It's what other communities, or how many other communities around do you see what you see here? I mean,
Yeah.
do you see? We have the opportunity to sit here and do all this. I mean, this was built for us.
Yeah.
You know, and that's amazing.
Well, and again, if you go back, and I would, challenge the viewers to just go back and look at our Facebook page,
Yeah.
and look at the Grinch videos we've done.
Yeah.
Look at our haunted house promo trailer video we did,
Yeah.
that we did, and that's honestly the guys that are with us today behind the cameras. And Scott Owens with DS1 Live, and Officer Cade Bray, who's got less than a couple years in the
Yeah.
department. But again,
But chose to come back.
well,
here.
but again, Cade Bray was a cadet of ours.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cade Bray, I've actually known him a long time, his family, and I've coached him in middle school football up through JV, through, varsity with his
Yeah.
brothers. And so, when you build those relationships with the community like that, and again, the cadet program did that, I think, for him, because he went
Absolutely.
off to Ball State.
Yeah.
He was actually doing some stuff up at Muncie Police Department, interning, and I know they were trying to recruit him. I mean, he's sharp.
Absolutely.
He's smart. I mean, good-looking young man.
Oh, yeah.
Give him that.
We could turn the camera and see him blushing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or his head growing. Which
Yeah, we
one
always
is it?
joke, like, everybody's like,
Yeah.
man, these 21-year-old dudes are growing some really cool beards.
Yeah,
So,
that's right. That's right.
I got some patches in mine. But, again, he returned back to this community.
Absolutely.
Right? And we have, I think, reaped the benefits of capitalizing on his talents, from all the video stuff that we've done, him and Scott going out. And, I mean,
Well, it goes
we were
back-
out at midnight in, like,
Yeah.
0-degree temperature, and they're flying the drone to get these exact shots. And
But it goes back to what you talked about earlier with kind of that vulnerability, where you were like, humanizing these are officers, but these are amazing humans who have interests in other things.
Right.
And I could go all day long on looking at each one of our officers. You could hand me the roster. I could go down each one of them and tell you the amazing things that they do, the amazing, guys and gals that they are, the amazing humans that they are. That's so much more than just a badge. So, again, just to have these opportunities, I think I'm incredibly blessed to be able to do it. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. We work for them and the community. That's what it boils down to. We have been given opportunities, and we want to make sure that officers like Cade and some of the others, this is homegrown talent. Okay. Not to say that we don't appreciate officers coming in from other locations, because they are great officers, but these are homegrown men and women who are truly invested in our community, and that is what creates longevity. It really does.
yeah, and I can't agree more. So let's kind of maybe shift gears just a little bit. So we've kind of done an overview of the agency and the divisions, but talk maybe a little bit about maybe the direction of the agency, and where we're things that we're continuing to do, and maybe new things that are on the horizon. Like, I know this is one thing that we're wanting to get started. I think our goal is to try to do a episode potentially every month.
Yep.
I know that we're maybe a little behind schedule because we filmed our first one. Had some issues with some lighting and some quality things. We went back and some sound issues, and thought KB and OCD as he is, which was great. He's like, man, I think we can improve it.
Too bad.
Yeah.
Adam were like, hey, can you make us look skinnier?
No.
Yeah.
It adds pounds.
Yeah, he said he can't do any magic, but no, I mean, it's so where are we at right now? As an agency, is there anything that's on the horizon? Anything you guys feel that's important for us to kind of highlight and discuss?
Yeah, so like you said, we are just a little bit behind because this is take 2
Yep.
of episode 1. So it's just continuing to grow what's already built. So obviously we've talked about it in the just a little while ago about technology. Technology is always growing, okay? But with technology comes a high expense.
It does.
So
Well, I mean, you talk about body cameras.
Yeah.
That's something that's new within the agency
Yeah.
for the last couple years. And I hate to use the word the industry standard, but I mean, really across America, a lot of agencies, officers are wearing body cameras.
Yeah, and it is an absolutely great tool to not only protect the community but protect the officer as well. So technology just keeps growing. We need to grow with it. With that, we also need to grow the future of the agency. We've talked about retirements. We need to grow those young officers to take that position.
Yeah, it was funny. I was talking to Detective Paul Hutchinson, who's, been a detective for a few years, and he's been to CSI school,
Yeah.
which is crime scene investigations. And he and I were talking, after a couple of those senior guys leave, I was kind of looking, back at the division, overall, and I'm like, man, you're going to be close to being that next guy in the box. You've got some other guys that maybe have a little bit more time on back in the division that have handled certain style investigations, but because of, I think, Detective Laguerre's knowledge, experience, his drive, his longevity back there, he investigates most of our major crimes. So our homicides are things that, and he does an amazing job, and he has, for the 28 years I've been there, he has truly been one of those staples for me to say, man, if I have that many years on and I still, can work as hard as this guy does, I mean, that has, that's driven me to say, hey, continue to, to emulate those type of people that, kind of you talked about. But, but Paul's like, yeah, he kind of, like, yeah. So, and I know that he recently went to a couple schools recently to try to get, just more knowledge when it comes to that stuff.
But you talk about that, and you talk about these kind of, hey, you're getting ready to be in the box. They're ready for it.
Yeah.
They're ready. The training, the things that they've done.
It is, but it's still, I know from my perspective, it's like I remember like getting my first homicide. I mean, it was a shooting, and not gonna lie, I mean, I knew I had all the resources around me, but like, dude, you're the lead, and there was still that feeling of going, man. Right, because there's nothing.
There's a lot of pressure on it.
Well, and the reason there's pressure is because there's a victim, right?
Yeah,
100%.
There are so many people that get impacted by, talking about a homicide. That it's a loss of life, and it's like you're carrying the weight of going, I have to do my absolute best for this person, for their family, for their friends.
But you again, like, and I think that that's incredibly important. But one of the other things is we have new detectives, right? You look at Detective Huskisson or Detective Toole, and has led Wayne County's first ever a program that others have emulated and modeled, dealing resulting in death. If that doesn't tell you that you're building them up right. and that foundation is there to be the next in line, I don't know what to tell you, but for the viewers,
it still doesn't change the nerve sometimes.
No.
It's like you could be in the batter's box and hit 100 home runs until that one dude's up pinching against you.
But you know what? I think the greatest hitters, they don't do that.
Yeah.
They walk into the box and they say, it's my turn.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we have, and I think that's a pretty special thing to have too.
Yeah, and they're the future. And they're like Adam said, they're ready. We give them the tools, give them the training, we give them the opportunities. They're ready.
Yeah. Well, and again, it goes back to that. If you just look at back, say, Detective Division, you've got a guy that's got 40 plus years on, and you've got a detective that's maybe got 6, 7, 8 years on. So it's they have the opportunity and the ability to shadow and be involved, because on most of, if not all of our serious investigations, it's kind of what we call an all skate, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's the entire division coming out. Maybe your responsibilities aren't being that senior person leading it, but you're right there behind them, doing all those things and that learning curve.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and you talk about people like Tom. You just cannot replace experience. But Tom's with them, and he's showing them.
Oh yeah,
Hey,
I've
been doing.
Showed
this.
me a lot. Yeah, no, I mean,
you walk side by side with him, and he's showing you how to be successful.
Yeah, and there's a lot of credibility. If you just look at someone like Detective Laguerre, and his conviction rate and the cases he's been on. I mean, honestly, in my 30 years, and I'd say maybe even the history of the agency, it's unprecedented that he's got, and been able to been involved in that many serious major crimes, and and it's a lot of work. I mean, back in the day, when things weren't so much computerized and digital, I mean, you kept case packets and books, and I mean, I remember him having 2 or 3 binders this full of all the work he did on one investigation, and being in court for a week or two, being part of the prosecution. So
and and I know Chief Weatherly can speak to that because the investigations was his bread and butter. I mean, that's where he came from. I didn't, I wasn't an investigator. That wasn't something that called me, but you've done that. You've closed those cases. You've closed those homicides and been able to give people that relief. And so I know you guys from having the opportunity to have done that know just what it takes. But for me, it's a lot of this stuff that we see today is you have to have that foundation and guys and gals that have been around for a while get that foundation. It's do the little things right, and that's what they're learning from people like Detective Laguerre, Detective Sutton, Detective Longnecker. But to kind of juxtapose that for just a second, the crimes that we are seeing in higher percentages now are more modern day crimes. Even crimes that have been a crime since the beginning of time. I always make a joke is that the people have been problems since people have been problems. But even the murders and things like that, we're finding that there is such a technologically part of that investigation. We're seeing fraud at rates that are unprecedented. I think recently I saw the financial crimes unit of the FBI had publicated something that said, in the last 4 years, $28 billion in cybercrime had taken place, and that's in the U.S. So, that tells you a couple things. One, that's $7 billion a year. For any of our business owners out there, they know that $7 billion a year means business is booming and they ain't going anywhere anytime soon. So, it's catching those individuals and understanding technology. And, again, another one that we see, technology being involved in human trafficking, and victimizing people. How real it is. I mean, these individuals live online. So a lot of the things, even when we're investigating something like a murder or an abduction or some kind of heinous crime, most of the evidentiary pattern that we're following isn't with our microscope, and it's tracking it down online. And one person that I think is huge on that is Detective Mike Wright. He is stationed up at the Muncie High Tech Crimes Unit, the HTCU, and he does all digital forensics. And the number of cases that he is sending back, the amount of information that he's getting from digital forensics, it almost far outpaces the physical evidence that we're seeing at crime scenes today. So, just to kind of see how much of that dynamics have shifted. And really where we investigate. I mean, we used to walk around a house and look for fingerprints, and then we still do, right? That's still part of the foundation. That's still part of the that's just like a good hitter that walks into the box. I mean, they know that they need to be able to, open their hips. They know that they need to be able to drive the ball. But there are some nuances today. Like I said, as much as I am, my dad is a diehard baseball guy, diehard Cincinnati Reds baseball fan. I somehow inherited that, which means that I have a lifetime of sadness ahead of me.
Which also means you're Ohio State.
I am a Buckeyes fan, which those are my bright spot. And then I round my sadness out with the Bengals, which just continues to make me sad. So, You
ever heard of the IU football team?
Yeah. Hey, getting lucky once doesn't make you a dynasty, okay?
We'll see.
Yeah, so I should get some good comment love in that one.
Yeah.
So, but no, you look at it and, these foundational ball players, that you see, those foundations don't change. The way that you throw a baseball, the way that you throw a football. But we have put so much more nuance into it today.
Yeah.
The Mike Trout of today is pales in comparison to the things that Hank Aaron had. Still one of the best that's ever done it. But there are a lot of different things in there, and I think our younger officers, that's the life they live. That's what they're familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
So it's using that foundation. It's using those, do the little things right. But again, they're living in a time such as this. I mean, they're living in a time where we're chasing down leads online.
Yeah.
Everything is online. Everything's a digital footprint.
Yeah.
Everything. There's not only do you have the physical evidence, the trace evidence that the CSI guys are looking for, but Mike finds it digitally.
Well, and it's almost nowadays, I hate to say it, it's almost required that you have to have it.
Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
you know that for the most part, potentially, it's going to exist.
Yeah.
It's just,
there.
it's there, and it's getting that, and having somebody that has the equipment and the capabilities to do it, and I know for us as an agency, any major crime like that, I mean, we're flooding Detective Wright with all of that technology.
And
We're saying, hey,
it's become an expectation.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
at one point in time to prosecute the case, you didn't necessarily need it. Now, I mean, if it's not there, they're at a loss. At one point it was, well, I got to ask for it. Now it's it's
Yeah.
a standard operating procedure. It's there.
Yeah, I can remember early in my career, when you're new, they're kind of jumping you through the different divisions, and I got assigned to the Wayne County Drug Task Force with those guys way back in the day. I mean, you're talking 28 years ago, and you talk about wearing a wire.
Yeah.
It's like, they actually, had people who wore wires.
Yeah.
And you got convictions off that.
Yeah.
I mean, just
Yeah.
because you had audio of two individuals talking, making a transaction, and then it just has evolved over the years to where
Yeah.
it's like, then you got to get video or you got to do this or that. And that's why it's important. Again, we go back to equipment and training.
Absolutely.
Right? And training that next.
Yeah, it's not just and I think that's the important thing. And obviously, there's a lot of people out there who don't think this, but it's not just, oh well, this is just some stuff for the police officers to use to do whatever, or oh we're making them fancy, or we're giving them too much. This is the day and age we live in, to where if we don't have the equipment and training, we're essentially ineffective, because time has passed us by. The time of just walking around, doing those sort of things, as far as a foundational crime, the trace evidence that you talked about, the CSI stuff, and that being enough to kind of get us over the hump, those days are long gone.
Yeah,
gone.
Yeah, because if you have all of that and don't have the digital, I mean, that can make or break a case.
Absolutely.
I mean,
and a lot of times, where do we find motive?
Yeah.
It's in that digital footprint.
Yeah.
And we've all seen it. Policing today has changed from when we started. So we have to keep up with it.
Yeah.
We have to be willing to change best practice, and that's done as a nation.
It is 100%.
Policies, we keep up with our policies and best practices, and that's what we work off of. So it's always evolving, and we need to change with it.
Well, and one thing, you mentioned just a minute ago, looking at, my career and when I started, when I applied with the Richmond Police Department, I believe there were roughly 260 applicants that filled the Richmond High School cafeteria, because you showed up in the morning, everyone in there took a test, they let you have a lunch break, you came back, you did the physical agility test, which you were there all day, then you had a structured oral interview, which lasted about 20 minutes, and you were competing against however the number was, 259 other people you had to compete
For
against.
one or two spots.
Yeah, and I think the first time I went through the process, there were 2 positions. So they created a list of 20 applicants, and they ranked you based on your performance, and then they would hire from that list. So if they were only hiring 2 people, and you happen to be 3 or 4 on the list, I mean, you just went through that entire process. And I think that as a country, we're probably seeing that fewer and fewer people are drawn to, being a first responder. I know from talking to the fire guys, it's kind of the same thing. The number of applicants that we used to yield isn't what we see nowadays. And I think that that's where there's challenges in there, and you have to think, I think, maybe outside the box and go, well, what are we going to do differently, right? And that's what's great about, like, the cadet program. That's what's great about even having conversations like this. I think that it's going to, maybe somebody listens to it and say, you know what, that's kind of, my interest a little bit, sparked my interest. But, and again, I was watching a podcast recently of a military vet guy talking about how, what made him want to go into the military was 9/11.
Yeah.
After that happened, he's like, I want to go serve and fight for my country. So, I think that, again, the direction that we've seen us move as a country with getting fewer and fewer applicants or fewer interest or whatever, we have to do our job to go out. You didn't have to used to, I say, market it because there was such a high demand. But, now we have to go out and market. We have to go to the gymnasiums, the college campuses. We've got a couple visits to some campuses here in the very near future. We're going to go stand in front of, probably 75 students that day and that are in a criminal justice program and say, hey, what are your plans after you graduate? What are your plans? Well, I've thought about Richmond Police Department. We get them connected, and that's something that I think that we've done. More recent is, when we have an applicant that goes through our process, again, they've got a physical agility And if they come in and let's say they don't meet the state standard, which is not a standard that we set, but the state standard, then we will, I mean, and we've done this multiple times, where we will give them an officer on our agency, give them access to them and say, they will help you with that side of the physical fitness part. You know, Sergeant Ware, I mean, she's taken under her wing several applicants and said, hey, let me help you out with, you know, Jared Smith. I mean, we could name, you know, that they've done it. You know, or if it's, you know, I remember, Raiden Faust, one of our newest officers. Again, another Northeastern graduate, went to IU East, graduated, was dying to get into law enforcement. And I started, you know, recognizing that after he graduated, you know, talking with his mom. And I'm like, connect he and I and let us talk. Yeah, fast forward 3 years and he's working for the agency, you know. And again, I remember when he was going through our process, you know, he's like, hey, do you mind just kind of help give me some pointers on, you know, how to navigate this oral interview? You know, a lot of, you know, you take a 21-year-old person, probably hasn't sat down and had too many structured oral interviews, and it's, you know, preparing them for them, right? Yeah, you know, from even their appearance to their demeanor, how they can, you know, handle the stress, to possible questions that they may, you know, have to respond to, and how to formulate their responses. So, you know, again, those are all things that I think that as I think not only our agency, you know, we know, you know, across the country that we're seeing fewer and fewer people that want to come into the profession. And it's a tough job, you know, from work schedule commitments to the demands of just, you know, working the holidays and, you know, everything that comes with it, with the stressors and all that. And that's why it does take very unique individuals that, you know, we can point, you know, figure out who they are, bring them in, and then start to invest in them. And we do that, I think, a great job of doing that right on the onset.
And I think one thing's important is, you know, they're not doing it for the pay.
Yeah. Well,
you know, I think that has to be said. And, you know, it's, yeah, are there some departments out there who pay a lot of money? Yeah, but that is few and far between. Yeah. You know, so
definitely in communities are much more affluent. That
absolutely right.
You know,
so you know, you look at it and you need to recruit and hire the best and the brightest, especially with the challenges that we see today. You know, technologically, understanding that, knowing that most things are going online. You know, we have individuals who, and you know, and I go into classes all the time when I talk to them and say, you know, who likes computers? You know, and they like, oh, I love it. I love to code and I love to do this thing. You ever thought about a career in law enforcement? They're like,
they don't.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
And it's like, you had to be surprised, you know, how much that we need that. You know, you look at the FBI. The FBI is not going into, you know, CJ classes and recruiting people. They're going into classes that, you know, are math, sciences, STEM classes, right? Because that is the way that we're changing as a society. So, you know, you talk about that, you know, it is a difficult job. There is some stress. We need you to be the best and the brightest. We need you to understand those things. And, oh, hey, by the way, we're probably not going to be able to pay you a whole lot more than you could probably go find anywhere else at an entry-level job. That's a tough ask.
Well, and that's what I've always said, you know, I mean, it truly has to be a calling.
It does.
You know, and I think that it's no different for, I mean, it's teachers. I mean, I think that's another profession that, you know, you talk to those teachers and all the things they've got to do. And again, it's like, and I'm sure if you went back and talked to teachers 30 years ago, you know, a lot of the same things existed. But, you know, when you talk to teachers nowadays, there's so many more things I think that they have to deal with in the classroom that maybe you didn't have to deal with years ago. And it's like, how can you put an actual price tag on the value of what teachers are doing, right?
But
so
civic,
again,
you know, civic duty is a lot more, or was a lot more important. You know, I think we see a lot of civic apathy, and justifiably so. I don't think that the government has given, you know, people a whole lot of reason to be optimistic. So, you know, again, I think that kind of comes back to where we are today is, you know, having those discussions, being real, being open, you know, not being afraid to, you know, call out the things that exist in this world. But to know that, you know, if anyone is going to make a difference, that's where you start.
Well, right? And that's where I remember I've got 2 sons, you know, adult age now, and I remember having conversations with them, you know, their junior year, what are you thinking, what are your hobbies, what are your interests, and at that age, I mean, it's like, you know, you really don't know. I mean, I didn't know.
Yeah. I was going to be a
know,
professional football player.
Yeah. I wanted to be like elite special forces or something.
Yeah.
But, you know, I remember having the conversation with my boys, and I said, just find what you love and you're passionate about, and then go after that. And don't, and this was just for me personally, like, don't chase the money, because that's not going to give you the fulfillment. Like, it might short term, but it's not going to long term. And, I'm very proud to say that my one son is a second grade teacher,
Yeah.
and my other son's a paramedic firefighter here for RFD.
Yep.
And then both of my daughter-in-laws are teachers. My wife's a teacher, so
Yeah.
maybe that's why I was giving them the plug.
Yeah.
But I
yeah.
see what they go through, right, and the challenges, and my wife talking about the heartaches that she sees, and how she's she's in her 28th year,
Yeah.
and how she's still just as passionate as now she was 28 years ago, and how she wants to make a change, and that tells you you're in the right profession.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you have to be passionate about law enforcement. Even when they come in, they have to find their passion within law enforcement. Everybody's got a different passion. I enjoyed investigations. Adam was patrol and canine. You're everywhere.
I've had a lot of hats.
Investigations.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's so many things that people are so passionate about. And we have great officers who are passionate about so many different things, and it's things that are near and dear to them. You can talk about Melissa Clark, who is a strong advocate for domestic violence and sexual assault victims, and then you go on down the line. Man, they're passionate, and that's what keeps them driven.
Yeah.
There's so many guys that are passionate about SWAT, canine. I mean, once you find that passion, you build on that passion. You grow on that passion. Sometimes that passion changes, and then you build and
that's
you grow
good,
on
right?
that.
I mean,
It happened for me.
Yeah,
I spent roughly 15 years in patrol division.
Yeah.
A lot of my time was on second shift for a long time. But after you do that, you're looking for other challenges. I mean, I still think that one of the biggest challenges is just doing the day-to-day patrol work.
Yeah.
But you get to a certain point in your career that you're maybe wanting to explore, do different things. And, I was given the opportunity to try to, go through the process of becoming a detective, was able to do that. And then after doing that for about a year, I was able to go do narcotics investigations at the time, and spent a few years up there, which I found very, rewarding. I was driven by it because I saw all the impacts that it has on our community and families, and then went back to detectives and was given the opportunity to go to CSI school, which was, it was long and grueling. I mean, I drove to Plainfield on the other side of Indy every day, getting out of the house at 5 in the morning to get there on time, getting home at 7 at night. I mean, it. You did it.
Yeah, we were in the same class.
We were in the same class, driving that back and forth, and you were just hoping on Friday they'd let you out early so you could avoid some of the traffic. But, spending 4 months doing that, and again, you have to be passionate about those things. I've also been able to do firearms instruction for a long time. I was on SWAT for 18 years. So, I really don't feel, for me personally, there would be another career out there that would give me all of these things and opportunities that I've been able to do, and to have a true impact in changing things in your community. I know, for a lot of guys, it's like, oh man, same thing over and over and all the time. But if you step back and look, I mean, every call that we get dispatched to, somebody has a problem.
Yeah.
And then, I've heard you say,
Absolutely.
it might be their very worst day. And us having the mindset of going in, it's like, hey, this could be their worst day. This gives me an opportunity to show who I am as an individual, right, and who I am as an officer for this
But how
agency.
many hats, and and the testing of the human psyche. One call, we just did CPR on a baby, and that is, we go, hey man, that's the worst day in the world. And then next thing you know, someone's car's been stolen, even though they left the keys in it and left it running. But that's the worst day of their life, and they're frantic, and to be there for them. To be an advocate for them, to tell them, hey, we're going to work on this, we're going to find this, we're going to do these sort of things, and just being able to shift that. There are very few things that, have a paradigm quite as unstable as that in law enforcement. So, when you sign on the dotted line and you put your name up, the old adage that you just signed up for admission to the greatest show on earth is the truth, because there are very few things that you will cover the scope and the depth of humans that you will in law enforcement.
Yeah, and I like the day-to-day challenges,
Absolutely,
that are presented for it. It's not, for me, I remember working in a factory one summer right after I graduated high school, and one of my friends his dad said, hey, I can get you guys a summer job. And it was difficult for me because I stood on a line and just did the repeated, the same process over and over and over. And I had to wait for the buzzer to go off to get my 10-minute break. And, for here, the agency, for our officers to go out and have that day-to-day interaction. I mean, I remember it was last year that I got a phone call from one of the principals at one of the schools about a student. I think he was probably in first grade that was just scared of law enforcement. And he said, hey, would you mind just stopping in and talking to him, maybe having some lunch or something? I'm like, oh, yeah, 100%. So I found myself at the school, actually in the classroom, and I noticed the little boy they had kind of pointed out, and and you could see he walked over to the teacher, had his body bladed, had his head kind of tucked, and I couldn't even make eye contact with him. I kept looking and wouldn't make eye contact. So I kind of knelt down. I was handing out stickers to the kids and kind of tried to work my way in, and and he was very reluctant. He was crying. He was scared. Man, I think I spent maybe 45 minutes there. And by the end of it, I've actually got him on my hip. He's hugging my neck, telling me he loves the, Mr. Policeman. It's like, man, how do you, that tugs at my heart today.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you not, as, that human element, want a job that rewards you, for that,
Yeah.
right? So, I've had a great career. Again, I'm so thankful for the opportunities I've been given throughout my career. My most current one, doing community engagement gives me that, things that I, go out and meeting people and building those relationships. And I think this is going to be great for the agency and the community,
Yeah.
that we can get, Lieutenant Lips in here on our next episode with some of our patrol, guys and gals, and talk about what they do daily, what their equipment looks like, and their schedule, and and all those things, and then just kind of build on there. Kick Captain Jury in here, Officer Uphouse, Sergeant Hobbs. Get some of our civilian staff, and I want to get our dispatchers in here. I want to get our cadets over here. So, Richmond, it's all going to unfold over the next 10, 12 episodes. We'd love to have you guys stick with us. I know we joking like none of us are, camera people, but, somebody's going to do it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Anything else you guys want to add or close with today?
No, I just appreciate everybody just welcoming us into your lives. Essentially, if you're watching this, we are now a part of your life. Not to say that that's a great thing or a bad thing, but we just welcome you. Obviously, I said it earlier, we work for you. So if you have any questions, have any problems, just give us a call. We will do our part to answer those the best that we can.
Yeah, I think for me, kind of close it out with saying, thank you. Similarly to what Chief Weatherly said. Thank you to our community for the opportunity to serve and protect. Thank you to Scott Owens, Cade Bray with DS1 Live for allowing us to use the studio and taking the time to put this together for the people to be able to see. Again, there really is no us without you. I think that's an important thing to kind of put out there. I hope that you've stuck around this long. If you have, then I just ask that, anything that you want to learn about, or anything you want to talk about, or maybe some future episode ideas, shoot it in our comment section. Obviously, this will be on our YouTube channel. There'll be a link that you'll get to see, and you'll be able to click on it and go to it. But it'll be on our Facebook channel. So, if you have a comment on it, tell us what you want to see. Again, this is for you. Our goal is to kind of open it up and allow you to be able to see it. So, again, just appreciate the opportunity to be here today and to do the things that we're doing. So,
Well, I appreciate both of you taking the time to come in today. I think I was given the opportunity to say, hey, would you want to be part of the podcast? I don't want to use the word host it, but just kind of help navigate some of the questions and stuff. And I was like, absolutely. Obviously don't want to, be on camera like most people probably don't. And I know even just recently, like when the video of the SWAT team got called out, it got all those views, I think 2 million views. And I took some poke from the family about, was that you on making announcements on the PA system? And I was like, yeah. And I listened to my voice. I'm like, man, do I really sound like that? So we're always, critical of ourselves, I'm sure. So, but with that said, I also just hope that our community finds value in this, that you guys continue to support us in all that we do. Through this podcast, you're going to, I think, get a firsthand look at who we are as an agency, and who we are as individuals. And I think that's important. You know, who is that person behind the badge? So that'll wrap up our first episode, roll call with Richmond, Indiana Police Department, and we hope to see you guys next time.